here we are again, starting to prep rows for planting. It's mid-April, last of the snow's melted, eastern Canada. We just put a light bit of composted manure down here, and this one are going to be beets, these two. So the white stuff is a little bit of boron. We're a bit boron deficient here, so it's just a very light powdering. It's probably about a half a cup for the whole row, and these are probably 30-foot rows, and a little bit of potash, bone meal, and blood meal, and that's really good for beets. We get a black corky marks on our beets if we don't use boron, and this seems to fix them perfectly. I'm just going about 6 inches apart, doing a nice tight one. We generally practice a no-till, no-dig, definitely no-till in our gardens, and this is the only digging that we do. We do dig for weeds. Of course, you do dig out root vegetables, and the broad forking aerates the soil and it lifts it a little bit. And yes, it is sort of semi-mixing for sure. I'll rake this row after it's broad forked, and then it's ready for seeding. Out in one of the small garden that is going to be all early crops. Today is a day, despite the rain, the cool weather, we're going to plant some cold tolerant stuff such as kohlrabi. So we have 3 trays of kohlrabi to go in this row, and we have 1 tray of kale. They're a much bigger plant and they're going to be spaced out over that row. The row covers are on most of these cool weather crops. 2 reasons. 1, it does prevent them from getting frost nipped in the evenings. We're still getting frost, and for the next month we'll probably get a few more frosts overnight. And the other thing is flea beetles. They're a little shiny, tiny little round beetle that jump like a flea, and they come out of the soil and they start chewing holes in the little tiny radish. They really love radishes and kohlrabi and beet leaves and kale and things like that, and broccoli leaves. So they need to have row covers on them when they're babies. And the row covers need to be, you can't really see it today, but the row covers really need to kind of billow in the wind a little bit, and that knocks them off. So to plant, I use a little dibble. You can use anything you want to make a little hole. Okay. I pop them out of the cell pack, right, and I'm going to drop them into the soil, push them down a little bit, and then just cover them up with this soil. morning, everybody. Today we're going to plant all the lettuces that are busting out of their cell packs and want to get out in the garden. It's still a bit cool. I think we're high today is 14 degrees Celsius. It's not a very warm day, but lettuces can tolerate quite a bit of cool, and I've been hardening them for about a week, at least 6 days. So I've got them, ones I'm going to plant today are all set up here. So in row 1, we've got red and green romaines, and it looks like some endive and radicchio down there. Those ones are the sweet red and green crisp. Those ones are red and green bib. Over in that row is red and green butter, and then we have the red and green lolos here. So I'm going to try to fit them in here. We put probably 4 5-gallon buckets of our composted manure on the top of each row, and then all I do for greens, all they need is nitrogen. They don't need anything else. Oh, and then we broad forked, and the broad forking just aerates the soil a little bit without disturbing it too much. So you're just putting your forks in straight down, and you're just lifting slightly. You're not really trying to break the surface of the soil. You're just trying to gently aerate the soil, and it decreases compaction, and we'll slightly mix some of the amendments. Will drop down into those holes a little bit deeper. But anyway, let's get planting on the first one. I adore romaines. They're my favorite lettuces. All right, so we're going to go 2 across. I'm going to use this dibble to make nice, big, deep holes. Any weeds you see, take them out now. We're on the last tray, last half of a tray. Be good to have them done. These are the bibs, the red and the green bibs. Okay, so we are out back, and these 1, 2, 3, 4 rows have a tiny bit of weeds in them. So that's my first job. It'd probably take 10 minutes tops just to pop those out. They almost look like they're either clumps of grass or dandelions. For dandelions, we go down. It's a great time of year to take dandelions out because you can get the whole thing if you do that. Other weeds, I use my Japanese thing. I just undermine it a bit. Shake off as much soil as you can. I'm going to make 2 troughs, and this is where I'm going to focus all of my fertilizers in. It has a plow on the bottom and a wheel and 2 handles. Now the next thing we're going to do, as usual, is put a bit of manure. I can do pretty precise applications of manure when I use a bucket. We've done a lot of this lately. There. Because it's so wet, it's so heavy, and that's probably enough for me. It's very light, you don't need a lot, and one bucket can do quite a few meters. So once the manure is done, I always add a little bit of Canadian potash. It's a potassium. Just inside the troughs, that's exactly where the potato's going. And it's a very light coat up with potash or potassium. So it's an essential part of your NPK. Next is organic bone meal, suitable for organic growing. Now, scab in potatoes is a fungal disease, and it can be devastating for your potatoes. So if your potatoes are scabby, you can eat them. The scab doesn't penetrate too deeply into the flesh, but it does penetrate a little bit into the flesh, which means they won't store. So, and they don't look all that good at the market table, which is important to me. So two ways you can help prevent it. 3 ways you can help prevent scab, because it will ruin your crop if you have it. One is use lots of bone meal. Lots of phosphorus will help. They don't like that environment. Okay, so that's good enough for that. The second is use lots of acid. And I have sulfur granules. Okay. So I put it in fairly thick, and it helps acidify the soil. Last year there was lime added here for the squash and pumpkins because they like alkaline soil. So I definitely have to counter some of that acid. So that's the sulfur. And you can see it's pretty thick. The bone meal is pretty thick. And then I put in a light amount of blood meal. This is your nitrogen, okay? So I'm just breaking the surface, but I'm going down as deep as I can to help decrease compaction. And yes, it adds a little extra work to your job, but it might make it easier to put the bulb potatoes in, the potatoes in with a bulb planter and get them nice and deep. So I picked up these potatoes a couple of weeks ago and laid them in this spare room on a double sheet to start to sprout. There is natural light in here, and they are starting to sprout. And yesterday I cut them in half. You want to give them 12 to 24 hours so that they can kind of cure. This just gets a little bit dried out, which is good when it hits the ground. When you're splitting potatoes, we'll just pick one up here. splitting potatoes, you can see that there's, several nice eyes on this side, and there's a couple ones here. So as long as there's one or two on each side, then you just take a sharp knife and you just cut it in half. So yesterday we finished the 8 rows, putting all the manure in, the sulfur, a little bit of potassium, and we put some bone meal and blood meal. Very little blood meal, but a lot of bone meal for phosphorus to help with scab. And you can see the yellow sulfur tablets still on there. They take a while to break in. So this is what we're hoping to get planted today and tomorrow. And I have my white seed potato for this 2 rows and for this. Okay, we're outside getting ready to plant. This is my secret tool for getting them deep, and I'll show you how I use that. That's a bulb planter, and so loosening that soil yesterday is really going to help get them deep, and I'll show you how that goes. I did a video on this last year to show you. So I keep to the furrow. You pick up your potato so that way you can place it properly. And using both hands, I just wiggle this down. And I want to go as far as I can. So I'm pretty deep in the soil. This is pretty much level with the soil here. Now I'm just going to twist and take it up carefully. Potato goes down as far as it will go. Turn this upside down and the dirt comes right out right easy. There. Okay. Done. I'll carry on in this vein. So it looks like there's roughly 50 to 55 potatoes per row. So I've got 200, maybe 225 at the most to put in. That's the goal for today. I might even get them done by lunch or an hour after lunch. That will free me up to do something else. And, we could start planting some red ones, or I would just prefer to do the red ones on another day because it's a lot to do this 200 and some odd times. It's a little hard on the wrists and the hands, but we'll keep going. So you might ask, why do I use this? What's the benefit of it? Well, this gets your potato seed very deep in the soil. So if I measured this, I can get it this deep from here to here. Well, that's a good 9 or 10 inches deep. I get them deep, then I don't have to hill. So in case you're wondering, why do we hill potatoes? Well, as the plant comes up out of the soil and the leaf canopy gets a bit weighted, heavy, and if say you get a good rainfall and the ground becomes somewhat soft, the plant will kind of tip over a little bit. You can start to pull the roots up out of the soil a little bit, and the potatoes will just come up more to the soil surface. So at that point, people come with their hoes or rakes or whatever, and then they make a hill on either side of the potato row to cover them up. So that's what your row cover should more or less look like. It looks a little bit crooked, but it's just sort of temporary. Once the potato plants start to grow and we'll see little evidence of them, we'll definitely have to loosen this row cover to allow them to grow up. These are 14 feet row cover, so it should be more than enough for the plant to be adequately covered without squishing it down. But it's a very windy spot up here, and it's they need to have lots and lots of heavy weights. A row cover is your friend, and I love row cover because it can help keep the soil a little, it can deflect heat a little because it's white. It can keep the soil a little bit less dry because it can trap a little bit of water underneath it, and when it rains and gets soaked, it stays wet a little longer than the soil, which is dark, dries out. So it actually helps prevent the soil from drying out a little bit quicker. So, and it's good for a physical barrier for insects like potato beetle, but you have to rotate your potatoes, because several of the beetles, if you do get a few that get away from you, they will go into the soil in that garden and they'll come up. As soon as the first potato plant comes out of the soil, they'll be there like white on rice, right out of the soil, right on your potatoes. But rotating it is they'll come out of the soil, and if your new potato plot is far enough away, they'll go, they can't find it. So the row cover is a must for potato beetle. In my opinion, it's the Colorado potato beetle. It's really bad here. So it also, the rain will penetrate through it, and no weed seeds. So another big plus for row cover is any weed seeds that are blowing around. It makes a perfect barrier to protect your soil from getting those seeds landing on it and germinating. It is a risky time of year with your new transplants, because this is the period they're most vulnerable to sudden changes in weather. You know, these things trap humidity, so it makes it a bit hot. These like the cold. You might get dry periods and extreme wet, so, and even frost, and even sometimes, you know, snow flurries. And so they're really vulnerable. And because they're so little, this is the time, you know, the pests can get into there and decimate them. So I always get the most nervous, I guess, in May and June. Once things start to get established in the garden, it's probably not gonna, you're not gonna come out one morning and find them, half of them dead. It's when they're little is when the tragedies happen. So anyway, just got to do your best. Make sure you keep them covered if they need the covering. Keep them nice and watered. Don't let them dry out, and pray. Let's get the row cover back on you.